Welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. This is episode 187. It's hot. It's hot here in New York. This is our first, not our first, but legit summer feeling day that we've had in a very, very long time. It's like 90 degrees out there. It's sunny. It's humid. And I love it. I think we're getting just at the precipice of a heat wave, which I'm into. I love it. We've had 8 rainy Saturdays in a row here in New York. It feels like we live in Seattle, and I'm over it. It's rained so much that even my flowers aren't liking it. There's been not enough sun, and it's time. It's time for those flowers to bloom, for us to feel the heat, feel the sun, and I'm glad that we're finally turned a corner just in time for summer starting. Summer just starts in a couple of days here. Actually, summer will be starting the day this podcast comes out. So it's a very opportune timing for this change in weather. My kids are more or less done with school. My 2 high schoolers are done. My poor guy in middle school still has to push through another week, but then he's done as well. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel. My daughter is graduating high school, moving on to the next phase of her life. And, lots of exciting things happening in the Mudgil household. And, we're just embracing it all. So with that, I thought I would kind of continue with a non-insurance bashing themed website and just talk to you guys a bit about things that have been on my mind lately. So as you know, I talk a lot about auditing your circle, like being very mindful of the folks you're hanging out with, and whose thoughts you're letting infiltrate your mind, and keeping your circle tight with folks who inspire you, who motivate you, who encourage you to be the best version of yourself, and encourage you to accumulate the daily wins that allow you to strive closer to any goals you may have, whether that be personal or professional. And it is important. But what I find even more important is, as time goes on, you actually spend much less time with your friends. Obviously your friends spend a lot of time, especially at my age, turning 50 in a couple of weeks here. I spend the abundance of my time with my wife and my kids, my family, which is, in my mind, the best use of my time. And then, on occasion, I'll get together with friends, maybe play around a golf here or there, or meet folks for dinner. I text with a small group of folks as well, my tight circle of close friends. But, we don't really see each other much. I'll be lucky if I see my friends a few times a year. But the amazing thing about that is when you have like a really close, tight group of friends, it doesn't matter how much time has passed. Time is really going by at a pretty rapid clip. And sometimes it feels like, even though it may have been 3 or 4 months since I've seen them, it feels like it was yesterday. But anyways, because you see your friends, fairly infrequently as life goes on, what's really important, what I found is really important to audit, is the content you consume. As the years have gone on, all of us are kind of like on our phones a lot more, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is the subject of another podcast, but that's just the way the world is evolving. And, it's interesting. I've been actually observing or being mindful of my own response to the social media I consume. As you've heard me say many times over, the most important part of any anti-aging skin regimen is using a proper sunscreen, namely one that's at least an SPF 30 and contains titanium or zinc or both. I couldn't be more excited to announce the launch of these 2 amazing Dr. Mudgil brand sunscreens. One is tinted, one is non-tinted, depending on what your preference is. I also have an amazing hydrating and moisturizing serum, which your skin is absolutely going to love. There's a link in the description below, which you can click to check out the products. You are going to love them as much as I do. And, on each platform, I kind of consume different things. So when I've been on X a lot more lately, just because my TikTok account has been really, really flat, because I'm basically like a shadow band on TikTok and YouTube. My content doesn't really hit the algorithm there. And my Instagram has been kind of just plateaued for a pretty long time. But I do consume all of those platforms, just when I'm about to go down to bed or for some downtime, etc. Or if I'm just checking in on comments to respond to, etc. But I've been on X a lot more than I've ever been on X, formerly known as Twitter. And on X, there's basically like two columns. Well, I don't really know the platform super well, but there's like two columns I kind of like oscillate between. One are folks that I follow, which I'm actually never on that part of X. When I'm on X is the For You page, essentially, like things that have been curated based on the content I consume. And nearly all of it, if not all of it, is like insurance bashing, pharmacy benefit manager bashing, politician bashing content, all more or less related to healthcare and how broken our system is. And that's the kind that I engage with. Like I'll frequently, retweet, or I don't know what it's called, I guess it's still called retweet, a comment and add my commentary. I'll comment on a lot of the content that resonates with me and interact with folks there. And I find it very, very, it's stimulating. It's also reassuring to know that a lot of other doctors and patients feel the exact same way that I do, and that there's a forum where folks can go and sort of gather around the virtual campfire and discuss this sort of stuff. And hopefully all of that discussion will lead to some action, because our system is very broken. And just this will be my final piece about this, but patients and doctors are on one side of the fence. We're basically trying to accomplish the same goals. Patients come to the doctors when they need help. Doctors give up literally an entire decade of their life to learn how to help patients. And the other side of the fence are all of the evil forces in medicine, like pharmacy benefit managers, private health insurers, sprawling hospital systems, private equity, which are all just trying to profit as much as possible, extracting as much as they can off of the backs of patients and their providers. So it's reassuring to know that other folks are like-minded, and we sort of commiserate on X. But when I come off of that platform, I'm always like riled up and angry. I'm like, God, the system sucks. And, it just seems like the road to change is unsurmountable. But it's not. Doctors and patients must be vocal. But I'm always like really, really fired up when I come off of X. And then I'll go to somewhere else. I'll go to Instagram. And Instagram, I kind of like scroll the page with all the folks that I follow. It's a lot of sports pages and my friends and family and things like that. And, it's pretty, sort of banal, benign stuff that I follow on Instagram. It's mostly feel-good type of stuff. But when I go to my For You page there, like lately I've been just for some reason just been like interested in like watches. And I follow a lot of like watch folks, like folks who, are experts on watches and, curate these watch collections and stuff. And my For You page is like all watches now. It used to be like all like bodybuilding and workout stuff. And, it's pretty much, the things that I'm into. It's all sort of like just stuff I want to learn more about or stuff that I'm interested in. That's what I consume on Instagram. And I come off of Instagram and I feel, just pretty flat, pretty, not riled up in any way. And then I might go to TikTok, and my TikTok page is interesting. It's like all like sort of like music content, stuff that I love, like it'll be like I'll be like learning how to play piano. So there's a lot of the little mini piano tutorials or stuff that's related to music. And I've also been, for some reason, really into latte art. And what I mean by that is I have a cappuccino machine that actually a very, very close friend of mine purchased for me. And it's kind of been like sitting there for a while. I haven't really used it because it was very intimidating, how to like use this particular device. But I got really into it. My kids have been asking me to make them cappuccinos, and I finally got the system fired up, and I've been watching videos on how to perfect the perfect pull from a cappuccino machine. And I'm grinding coffee, I'm weighing it, I'm making cappuccinos, and I've been really obsessed with like the little art that you make on top of a latte or a cappuccino. And so I've been consuming a lot of that content. It's very just wholesome, nice content. I always come off of TikTok inspired. Like I either want to sit down at my piano and like try to play something that I just saw on TikTok, or I want to make a cappuccino with art, which I'm horrible at now, but I will get better at it because I obsess over these things. And my YouTube is pretty similar. So it's all like, music content. Like I usually go to YouTube and I'll just kind of like go on a deep dive of some artist and just watch a bunch of videos of like music that I love. And I always come away from that, feeling very warm and fuzzy. And the reason why I'm explaining or sharing all of this with you guys is because the content we consume shapes our mindset so much. And, the way I feel coming off of these various platforms is, solely based on that content I'm consuming. When I come off of TikTok watching music content or like, cappuccino content. I feel very inspired. I kind of want to dive at it and get better at making cappuccinos and the art that I make on cappuccinos, or getting better at piano, or I watch a lot of guitar videos. All of that content, it really inspires me. I really feel really, really good after consuming that content. Whereas on like X, also very important content, and I'm fired up in a different way. But I'm also like I kind of come off of that platform just riled up and kind of angry a little bit, to be honest with you. So more important than obviously it's very important to audit your circle, but it's very important to audit the content you consume, the things you read, what you watch on if anyone watches TV anymore, what you're consuming on TV, what you're consuming on your social media platform, because it very much informs what's going on in your mind, and the thoughts that you're creating, and the habits that you're building. So just something I have been thinking about a lot. The other thing I've been thinking about a lot is the other day, it was last Friday, my son had a very, very late basketball practice in town that's like half an hour away from where we live. So I dropped him off, and I just went to like a local restaurant and had dinner at the bar. And I was talking to another couple that was sitting next to me. Just, I love eating by myself. Actually, I actually love sitting at the bar when I'm eating, because I just like, I like the solitude. Sometimes I just read the New York Times on my phone, or whatever while I'm there. But you never know. Like, you strike up conversations with random folks, like total strangers. And I was talking to this couple, and we were talking about social media, and like we're talking about their kids are much older than mine, but I was talking about how my kids are. We're sort of all on our phones a lot, and our kids are that's like their world is their phones. Like Snapchat, the way they communicate with their friends. In fact, my son may have some friends over, and like they're all kind of just hanging out together, but on their phones. And the sort of like visceral reaction to that as parents is like, wow, like you guys are just always on your phones, and it's not a good thing. It's really you need to like interact with each other and get off of your phones. And I remember when I was growing up, my mom was like, you're watching too much TV, and I'm sure the generation before that was like, you're listening to the radio too much, or whatever it may be. But I just think that's the way the world is evolving. Like, my kids, your kids, that generation, it's very tied to technology. And like, the way they interact with their world is very much a digital way. And that's not to say it's a good thing or bad thing. That's just the way things are going. And we're just talking about like, connecting with our kids, and, like they're always on their phones, and how difficult it is to do. And, what I said to them, and it's something that I really believe, I was like, the only thing that matters, like, from generation to generation to generation, there's always been some new thing that's been like, throwing a monkey wrench in the way parents think the world works, whether that was radio back in whenever, the 20s, TV in like the 50s, up to my generation, now like, social media and cell phones. But the one unifying theme, and the one thing that's the most important thing in a household, is love. And you could still have an abundance of love in your household even if folks are on their phones. It's a different time, and we're all consuming different content, and the world is different, and there's AI now and all this other stuff. But the one thing you can't take away is love. And I saw the reason why I was thinking that is I saw a post, I think it was actually on Instagram, that like, there's no like greater compliment than when like, when your kids are adults, when they don't need you anymore, that they still gravitate to you and they still want to hang out with you. I see that, with lots of folks who came from loving families, they still like, want to hang out with their parents. And that's really a testament to the love that was created in that household. And that's something that spans generations. And it doesn't matter what technology is doing or whatever newfangled stuff that's out that, kids are obsessed with. Love is a human trait, that humans, uniquely can love. And, that love is what binds families together, what binds friendships together. It's what we all gravitate towards. So I'm a firm believer in, technology is going to keep advancing. Our world is going to keep moving faster and faster. That's just the way the world works. Things move at lightning speed compared to the way they were when I was a kid. And God, I imagine what my mom must feel like. It's like, like the speed of light, I'm sure. for her how fast things are relative to how it was when she was growing up. But the one thing that doesn't change is love, and the content we consume should espouse that. So those are my sort of thoughts of this week. It's very important to audit your circle, but it's very important to also audit the content you consume. And the more content that you consume that's steeped in love, the better this world is going to be, the better your collective world, your individual world is going to be, and the better our collective world is going to be. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful, restful weekend, just ready to crush the week ahead. I'm going to be enjoying the heat this weekend. I hope you are too. Get a little pool time or beach time with sunscreen on, of course. And we'll see you next week. Let's get it.